Hey, welcome back. I have a new video. This one here is different from what I normally do. I'm trying something new, and I'm going to just warn you now, it is going to be kind of a long format video because I'm going to be covering expanding your army after finishing your starter set. I think this is a topic that warrants a little bit of discussion. I think most people who are playing Horus Heresy are at least familiar with 40k. But if you're coming over from 9th edition, or if you are actually just new to the hobby and saw there was excitement around this new game and decided to hop in, maybe you were a fan of the books before but didn't play the tabletop, then maybe this will be of help to you. If it's not, that's okay. This is just something that I'm going to put out there, and we'll see what it is. So if you have any thoughts or comments on the actual video style itself, just let me know in the comments and I'll take a look, and I'll do my best to improve that in the future. So let's get started. So what you're already going to have if you bought the box and you didn't split it is you're going to have two characters. For some reason I wrote 2 HQ characters, but I guess that's technically true. You're also going to have 40 Marines. These are the Mark 6 Beakies that are in there. 10 Terminators, Cataphracti, however you say it. 1 Contemptor Dreadnought, and 1 Spartan Assault Vehicle. So very easily, right out of the box, that's 2,000 points with the right upgrades. Some of them are, nice, big, expensive upgrades that quickly fill up those points, like say putting a flare shield on the Spartan and the extra twin link las cannon. That brings him up to like 425 points, something like that. And that's just one vehicle in the one piece of this whole kit is almost 25% of your 2,000 point list. So if you even went ahead and also bought the weapon boxes, one or both, you can even further build up your points that way. But that's really just dependent on what you bought. Oh, sorry, I just had to take a little break there for a second. So HQ. Build them just both however you want. You can build them just as the sprue shows, or you can customize them like I did with mine. But basically just build these two guys. You're going to want at least 1 Praetor because his rules are very good, but you're only allowed 1 per 1,000 points. So if you're going to use the second, make sure it's in a 2,000 point game. Otherwise, that's not a legal choice. And the second one, if you're not playing 2,000 points, take a Centurion and either run him just as a cheap character, or pick a consularis role like the Chaplain, which gives a unit that he's joined Stubborn and Hatred, or make him a champion, which gives him a free Paragon Blade and makes him, a combat specialist, I would say, because I think he also gets weapon skill 6. And there's a whole bunch of other ones. It's really just dependent on what you want or what fits your Legion and playstyle. The elites, this box you get 2. You get the Cataphracti Terminators. You can either do 10-man and maybe stick them inside the Spartan, or you can do 2 5-man squads. And if you're going to do that, I would suggest using half of them as a Legion-specific unit if you can. I think every Legion, or at least everyone I've looked at, has a special Terminator unit. Some of them are in Tartaros armor, like the Night Lord Antikar unit, but many are in Cataphracti armor, so just run them as that if they give you a good bonus. And that's kind of like how I would do the Terminators if I was just coming in with limited options. This gives you a special unit. It gives you a bit of a Legion flair to your army. And it also is going to bump up your points most likely. So it's something to consider. You get 1 Contemptor Dreadnought, And as far as I remember, and I looked through my sprues and stuff, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, you only get one fist, which does mean, and just basically one of every weapon. You really can't just go and make the Contemptor Dreadnought you want until that plastic kit comes out. But I think with a fist and a Gravis As cannon, it's a really good choice. It offers you a really strong range shot every turn, a couple shots, and then in close combat, it's still a Dreadnought with a power fist. So, pretty solid unit, I think. Oops, sorry, I bumped my mouse there. It'll go away in a second. And if you did buy the special or heavy weapon kits, you might want to consider a veteran squad with some of your Mark 6 Marines. They do have 2 wounds, but the downside here is that they're not a line unit. As far as I recall, at least, I'm pretty sure they're not. It's the 2 wounds are nice, and they can be a small unit with a lot of weapon options. So it might give you a little platform to put some different weapons in that you otherwise would have to go with like a dedicated unit, like the tactical support or heavy support squads. Troops, you get 40 Marines. You can do whatever you want with these. And there's several options. If you look in your troop section of your book, I would suggest focusing on the Legion squads right now. Just because the kit itself just really only gives you that. If you go out of your way to get some extra bits, whether it's jump packs or chain swords, bolt pistols, things like that, you can definitely do some of the other ones like the assault squad or the I can't think of their name right now as I'm talking here. I'll continue. I'll bring up their name. But there is a squad of Marines. They are called, oh dear, there's Breachers that have shields, the Despoiler squad. They're essentially assault Marines that don't have a jetpack. And these guys here, you can technically make the tactical or heavy support squad dudes with them as well, but they have to get the weapons from those boxes unless you're finding another source. So, again, it's just down to how much you spent initially. But your troops are important because these are guys that are going to be taking and holding objectives. And the bigger the squad, the longer it will take the enemy to remove you from an objective. So that's also important to keep track of. Heavy support, you get the Spartan Assault Tank. This is a really good anti-tank vehicle because you can have up to 5 twin-linked las cannon shots. Twin link lets you reroll misses. And that's a lot of firepower. In this game, a las cannon is 9 strength. It is 2 AP, meaning it gets +1 to the penetration chart, meaning on a 6 you outright destroy an enemy vehicle. But also it has Sunder, which lets you reroll the damage. So they're really strong. But it's not really all they do. So it has a transport capacity of 26, which means you can put 26 standard size models inside it. Like as an example, a 20-man Legion squad with some characters, or you could put in 13 bulky models like Terminators. And I think there's also the very bulky, which take up 3 slots, in which case you'd get 8. I don't offhand know what units are very bulky, if there are any. The other thing, too, is that as a transport, it's an assault vehicle. Normally, when you get out of a vehicle for disembarkation, the occupants cannot charge that turn. These guys can, because the front ramp opens and they kind of run out like it's kind of like a D-Day landing craft, and they can go right into combat. So with a combat power, like a combat focused unit, this is a very powerful combo. And it's still moving forward firing those las cannons, even at reduced ballistic skill with the twin link. You have a fairly good chance of getting 1 or 2 hits every turn, even still. So the Spartan's a super cool and kind of an unexpected inclusion. I didn't think there'd be anything this powerful in the starter set. This is probably the most powerful unit I've ever seen in any starter set with after all the years I've played. But at this point here, you need to start asking what you're going to add next. And other than the Legion specific book that you have to buy to use with your army, I mean, I guess technically you don't have to buy it. You could just always kind of borrow rules off of friends, but you want your own book. So getting past that, this gets into just a few different ideas of what I think you should be looking at. For me, I want to add units and upgrades that complement what I already have from the starter box. So my starter box units, the way I use them is I built 20 Legionnaires, and I built the Spartan, and I built a Praetor. I still have 20 Legionnaires to build, which means I'm going to add special and heavy weapons to those. I can obviously add more Mark 6s or Mark 3s or 4s just by buying a box of 20, which I will be doing as well. And with those, I can build more Legionnaires, or I can build more Assault Marines to go with the 10 I already have. Or I can just do a variety of different things. Basically, the core troops, you can do a lot with them, so that is important to keep in mind. Adding another box of 20 guys at some point with upgrade parts is always going to be viable for a lot of different reasons. I also want to avoid any big Forge World purchases right now. I do own a Storm Eagle, as I've said and shown off. But I don't want to get like a Fellblade or a Mastodon or anything that is going to overwhelm me either as a rule issue or just building it. And I don't want to also rely on a model. Like if I buy myself a Warhound Titan, that's cool. They look awesome. I've wanted one for years. But if I add that right now, I'm going to kind of basically just focus my army as being a Warhound Titan, and everything else is just there to, fill points out or, get in the way and take shots. I don't think that's a good way to learn a game system. I think you want to focus on units that are going to challenge you as a player. And get the big fancy stuff later. Don't forget that before you consider any of my suggestions, that you do need to look really closely at your Legion. This means knowing the special rules they come with, the special options, what their play style is, knowing their custom rights of war, also looking up the basic rights of war. You need to know all this stuff, because if you just buy things and then turns out that it's not a viable way to play. For example, my Night Lords, if I do the Terror Assault Right of War, then I will only be allowed 1 heavy support, I believe. So right now I have 2 heavy supports. And if I get the Rights of War going, I can't use both of them. So adding a third one, I have to know that I have everything I need for a different Right of War. So plan accordingly. Don't make purchases that you can't use without, more purchases. And I guess other than that, the organization chart is important. Again, if you're new to this edition, or this type of edition, I guess, or if you're just new to the game system in general, you want to make sure you understand how you build your army. You get a certain number of slots in each selection type. Your HQ, your elites, your troops, your fast attack, your heavy supports, your Lords of War, Primarch, fortifications, things like that. And there's a couple of different versions of the force organization chart. You just need to make sure that you're using it legally. So read those rules really carefully. Now, taking objectives. This is going to be something you need to consider. You do get those 40 men. And if you build them as 40 just regular tactical Space Marines or Legionnaires, sorry, then you have 40 guys that can take the objectives that are around the board, depending on the mission. But it's also going to depend on how many units. It's not just the number of models. 40 Legionnaires is really strong, but you might need to have, say, a 20-man unit and two 10-mans, or two 15s and a 10-man, things like that, to break it up. And you're also going to maybe just want to buy some more troops. Again, this is what I was saying, that there are other units like the Assault Marines that they have that special line type. So in your unit types, when you're looking through your rule book, I forget which page it's on, but basically when it's describing unit types, it'll be like infantry and automata and vehicles and whatnot. And then it'll have subtypes. One of the subtypes for infantry is line. This means that they have the ability to be scoring and denial units. Now, most anything that's not a vehicle is denying, but scoring is something that's pretty rare. You have to look at every unit under their characteristics of what type of unit they are. You will find most of your line units in the troop section. So this is like those Eradicators I mentioned, your Legionnaires, your Assault Marines. And these are the guys who will be able to take an objective when they're within 3 inches. And that means they're scoring. You want to have, in my opinion, at least 3 scoring units in like a 3,000 point game. I would think you'd want more, maybe 4 or 5. So make sure you have enough infantry. That can be overwhelming or daunting for some people because you already have 40 infantry plus the 10 Terminators and the 2 characters to paint. 52 infantry. But 20 more infantry is probably not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. So definitely consider getting some more units with the term line. That subtype is really important. And also, I'm going to point this out here. On page 307 of the rule book, that's where it explains scoring and denial. Make sure you read those over just to understand fully what I'm getting at. You also need the ability to remove enemy scoring units and other units they intend to use as denial units. So you have to make sure you pay attention to the other choices as well. Don't just have a bunch of guys that can take objectives but aren't good at removing enemy units, because you need to shift them just as much as they're trying to shift you. The 20-man unit is good for holding an objective because they can take casualties. But 20 bolters is not going to remove a lot of enemy units. When Marines shoot Marines, it's 3s to hit, 4s to wound, and then a 3+ save. So 20 guys at range are going to get about, was that like 12, 13 hits, something like that. And then half of those are going to wound. So you're down to like, let's say, just say on a good day, you get 8 wounds out of those 20 shots because of your misses. And then you need to wound on 4s. And then only 1 in 3 of those will die. So now let's bump it up to 9 wounds just to make it easy. 9 wounds become 3 dead Marines. And if they also have 20 guys, you guys are going to be at this all day. You're basically just looking for a lot of luck at that point. And even though the game is based on rolling dice and luck, you don't want to, base your plan on luck. So let's pay attention to the next sections as well. Mobility is really key. The game is not static. You need to be able to get around the battlefield. So the box set gives us one vehicle, the Spartan, and it's a really good transport, but otherwise you don't have a lot of mobility. One unit will be in there with one character, maybe two, and that's it. If you need to move in two different directions, only one's going to get there quickly. Unless they're running, in which case they're not shooting, so you're giving up firepower. Mobility can be provided by just adding a Deimos pattern Rhino, and that'll hold 12 guys. You can either put a tactical support squad in it that maybe has the basic flamers, or you can give them plasma guns or melta guns or whatever, and then you can move them up to better positions and use them for their firepower. Or you could use a despoiler squad. I mentioned they are legionnaires that have only a pistol and a chainsword. They're good at close combat. They're basically assault marines without a jump pack. So if you give them a rhino, they are now assault marines in a rhino, and they have the benefit of being a line unit. So they can get up there, get into combat, and take away an objective. Assault marines are, to me, a really good choice. I've heard some people say they're not good, and haven't played anywhere near enough games yet to know if they're right or wrong, but they're marines that have a 12-inch move. They can bypass terrain by going over it. You know, you don't want to land in it, but smaller sections of terrain that would otherwise slow you down, you're just hopping over it. So that's really good. And you have either the troop choice assault marines, or you have, in some cases, like my Night Lords or the Raven Guard, there's a couple of others, they have their own jump jet specialists. The difference is going to be that they are not going to be troops. They're going to be like an elite or a fast attack unit. So you need to pay attention to that, because it gets into those other slots, and it also means they're probably not a line unit. The benefit of the specialist ones is they seem to tend to have 2 wounds. So that's a big deal when you're talking about guys that are exposed and rapidly moving forward. You know, if you have 12 of them, 10 to 15, let's say, that takes you from 10 to 15 wounds to 20 to 30 wounds that need to be killed. So that's pretty handy. You've also got bikes and land speeders. There's different types of bikes, either with wheels or ones that have like anti-grav, and both have their uses. One is, the ones with wheels are cheaper. These guys go into your fast attack choices regardless, and it's just down to what weapons they carry usually. Land speeders, unlike previous editions of 40k that used armor, these don't have armor. They just have a toughness like dreadnoughts do now. So that's something to keep in mind if you haven't noticed that. They're not as easy to just quickly remove because they're like, armor 10 or 11. They're now just like a toughness 5 or something like that. So you can't outright kill them with something like a las cannon or auto cannons. And even though they're, not super tough, they're still tough enough that it will require some dedicated fire to remove them if you have more than one. They also, all of these choices, the bikes and the land speeders, they can have a bunch of weapon choices that a lot of other fast units can't have, like multi-meltas. And you can move them very quickly into a position where you can remove high threat units. Whether that's enemy heavy armor or using heavy flamers, you can burn infantry off of terrain and objectives before the rest of the army gets there. And a lot of these actually will also come with like Outrider as a special rule. Scout and Outrider. This means that you can deploy ahead of your army or coming in from the left or right side of the board. Both of these are really powerful, and allow you to basically, again, control the battlefield a bit. So, sorry. The main thing I'm getting at here is Horus Heresy is not a static game. Some armies are definitely going to sit there and they're just going to want to trade shots with you. That's good for those armies. You know, they can kind of forget about mobility to some extent. But most armies are not going to be able to sit there and trade blows back and forth with every other army and, you know, feel like it's confident that you're going to win. You know, it's going to be a lot of cases at best 50-50. Who has the stronger units, who has the better ranged firepower, and so on. You want to be able to get your men around the board and control the board. If you're in charge of the board, the flow, the movement of that battlefield, then you are the one that is basically forcing your opponent to react. If your unit is jumping over a big piece of terrain, suddenly they need to shift units over to a different part of the battlefield, maybe to get line of sight again. This takes away that firepower that they might have over you, because suddenly it's moving and may not be able to fire or is only snap firing. So just basically keep that in mind, that if your legion isn't going to give you benefits and bonuses to being, you know, in one spot, then you probably want to be able to really quickly move around, because that way there, you're the one that's in charge of how the game, you know, flows. Ranged firepower, the most obvious and the most, in my opinion, fun, is going to be just sort of down to what you want to add. And this one here, there's so many choices, so it's hard to kind of cover this well and not feel like I'm just cherry picking. So you can definitely rely on the las cannons that your Spartan and your Contemptor come with in that box. I mean, between them you have like, what is it, 5, 6, 7 las cannon shots every turn. That's a lot. And that means you're going to be able to hurt enemy vehicles. Usually you can probably remove 1 or 2 every turn. But infantry are a little bit harder. Las cannons are really good against Terminators, but they're not so great against basic Marines. Shooting 7 las cannons at 20 Marines, well, the best you can do is remove 7 Marines. So if you're going to add more anti-tank, I do want to just add this before I continue. Just look for weapons that have Sunder, Armor Bane, and Exoshock, just because they do really improve your chances of causing damage to vehicles. But right off the bat, you have a lot of firepower, so I'm just going to kind of move past that. So what about killing basic infantry? This is where things like Whirlwinds, which have a template, come in. That means you can hit a lot of units with a single shot. Or you can get something like a Sicarian Punisher. Now, I said I wasn't going to buy big Forge World stuff, but again, I meant the super heavies. This is just a standard heavy support tank. You can take squadrons of 2, and each Punisher has 18 strength 5 shots. They're only AP 4 or 5 or something, so it doesn't really matter because Marines are going to ignore it. But it's still 18 shots. And I think it might even be twin linked. But the point is, it's a really high number of shots. That's how you remove infantry without getting into the AP 2 and 3 weapons. And very few of those actually are good at killing many units at once. And most of the ones that are, you're going to find are stuck on super heavies and stuff. A what is it called? An Avenger Mega Bolter or something like that, that comes on a Warhound Titan. Has like a bunch of like really strong bolter shots that can remove infantry. But again, then you're buying a Warhound Titan, so that's a huge leap in purchases from the starter set to your first extra mini. So the Sicarian Punisher is a neat and definitely interesting idea to look at. Another option is to just remove infantry with more infantry. You can either add more Legion squads, 20 men with bolters just firing at range, and over time that will, force the enemy to roll saves, and with some good luck you can remove 4 or 5 every turn. The other option would be to buy 20 more Marines and then buy some heavy or special weapon boxes to supply them with those weapons. 5 or 10 guys with plasma guns, 5 guys with missile launchers, 5 guys with heavy bolters. That's a really good way to remove infantry. And in some cases, you'll also threaten light vehicles or even heavy infantry. Plasma guns are really good at removing Terminators and regular Marines, so they are definitely a decent weapon. And at strength 7, they can hurt vehicles like rhinos and stuff. So, not a weapon to kind of ignore. All right. The other thing too about those units, just before I let that part go, instead of going with a vehicle, if you choose infantry, you won't lose infantry to a lucky shot. My first game, I lost my Spartan to a single las cannon shot. I hadn't even had a chance to move it or to fire with it. It just took one las cannon shot and it exploded. If I had had 5 Marines with las cannons, then at worst I would have lost 1 Marine to that one las cannon. So yes, they can be shot and are somewhat technically easier to kill. They also still need to all be killed and chased off the board. So keep that in mind. That is sort of a benefit to firepower based on infantry. Now, close combat, strength I called it, but I guess close combat specialism or specialist might be the better way to say it here. You come prepared in this box set with bolters and las cannons, just like coming out your ass. You have so many. This is a really cool set between the 40 Marines, the 10 Terminators, the Praetors, the Dreadnought, and the Sicarian. Like, you have a lot of shooting. The Terminators are good close combat units, but like I said, because of mobility, only 1 unit of them, whether it's 5 or 10 men, can be in that Land Raider moving quickly. Otherwise, they're on foot. And foot Terminators are slow. Now, the best thing to get, I think, is coming out this weekend, or going up for pre-order this weekend. The new Leviathan. Leviathan is a heavy support unit. It's got really good stats, and it's got really good close combat abilities. I think this model here, especially at the price point that it seems to be coming out at, you're looking at a really viable option for adding close combat strength. Either you'll get them into combat with infantry and just tear them up while they have a hard time hurting you back, or you'll get a hold of vehicles and you'll tear them apart. Either way, this guy here has a lot of potential. And again, plastic kit is much cheaper than the Forge World versions. I've toyed with the idea of buying the Forge World Night Lord Leviathan for 5 years at least. And at $172 at its current price point, I've always felt it overpriced because you have to buy the body and then 2 arms. I think the cheapest it ever was about 150, maybe 130. But that was always sort of like, wow, that's really expensive, because if you think that goes down to 130 from 172 Canadian, then for example, a box, or like a Land Raider back then was about $90. Like the prices have gone up a lot, but even when the prices were relatively speaking lower, the Leviathan was always very expensive. This new kit is expensive, but it is on paper a far better price point and deal compared to the Forge World options. So I definitely think it's worth looking at. And it's one of the few units until the Contemptor Dreadnought comes out that is going to be able to be really combat focused, using more than just like chain swords and stuff. You can always go with more Terminators. You can go with Assault Marines. But this guy here, I think this is the guy to go with. And then I think you should also look at maybe getting something cool. If you've gone and bought something for each of those sections, the mobility, the objectives, firepower, and close combat, maybe looking at something cool is where you should go next. So as I said, I own a Storm Eagle. Not a fun model to build, but it's definitely fun to look at. It's definitely fun to push around the board. And I think it's a great example of something that's cool. Having a big flying transport show up, firing off las cannons and multi-meltas and stuff is, to me, cool. And especially if, 20 Night Lords hop out of it. But I think a better option here is your Primarch. If you're buying from Forge World, it's all expensive. Like I just said, the Contemptor Dreadnought's $172 with 2 weapons. Sort of Contemptor, the Leviathan Dreadnought. I think I said Contemptor. Anyways, he's 172. Conrad Kurz is like 145. He's still very expensive. But Conrad Kurz is my Primarch. I already have Conrad Kurz. I bought him years ago. But that doesn't change the fact that if I had to pick something right now, I would say my cool model to get would be Conrad Kurz. I think the cool factor of a Primarch does justify the price. It's an expensive hobby. I don't like where the prices have gone, but if I'm going to spend 150 on one model, a Primarch's a really good starting point. Why you would pick a Primarch, I think, is just beyond the fact that they look cool. It does sort of motivate you, I think, to really work on your Legion, because you've now committed to it. They also give you huge bonuses. Offhand, Conrad Kurz gives 2 or 3 really strong bonuses to the entire army, and it has a bunch of basically paid for special rules tied into his special rules that then become free for the whole army. So they have a lot of power, and I don't even think he's one of the more powerful ones. I think he's up there, but I think there's even ones that are more powerful than him. I'm not saying buy a model just because it's powerful, but if you're gonna buy an $150 model from Forge World, I could get, for the same price, I could get the 5 Contakar Terminators. But to be blunt, I would rather just buy 5 Tartaros Terminators and convert my own. They're not worth $150. This guy arguably is. So I think looking at your Primarch is definitely something that is going to add that wow factor to your army. So that would be my suggestion here. Other things exist, again, like the Storm Eagle, if you want to build one. I don't want to build one, but I'm going to build another one anyways, but besides the point. I don't want to, I guess is what I'm saying. But if you want a Fell Blade, I guess, this is kind of where this comes in. This is when, if you've got the other stuff, this is when you should start looking at getting the super heavies and whatnot, or a Primarch. That's just my suggestion here. And we're just going to wrap this up because this is a long video. Horus Heresy is a game where options for army expansion are incredibly deep. And if I went through everything in this video, I'd have to consider all the different unit types. I'd have to consider the legions. And this could be itself a huge series of videos where I'd have to like basically learn every legion enough to talk about it with confidence. And I don't think that's necessary. A lot of people are doing that, but it's really important that you understand your legion, not that someone on YouTube told you you're a Night Lord, so you should buy Night Raptors. It's important that you understand why you should buy Night Raptors or Terror Squads or Contakar Terminators. It's important to understand why the Rite of War Terror Assault is worth only having one heavy support. So I wanted to avoid that. And I think the suggestions I've given you, even though they're fairly vague and general, they have they have good direction to start from, because that's really all a lot of players need, is sort of an idea of where to go. When I was running a school club years ago, I tried not to tell the kids who were getting their armies what to buy. I didn't want them to buy an army because I told them they should. I just simply helped them understand what it was they wanted out of their army and looked at units with them that could fill those roles if they picked something, or look at armies that would, you know, do those things. If they liked lots of models, I didn't just say buy Tyranids. I showed them the Tyranids. I showed them Orcs. I showed them Imperial Guard. And I talked about the differences. I think it's important that when you're building your list for Horus Heresy, essentially you understand what it is you need to win a game, what you need to make a fun list, and just kind of realize that you're looking for these things to fill those criteria. You need to be able to take objectives. You need to be able to hold objectives. You need to be able to get around the board quickly, either to take and hold objectives or to attack units that you need to get off the board. You also need the firepower to remove the enemy, and the units with the power to get into combat and shift those enemy units that you can't just shoot off a board. You can spend all day shooting at Terminators. It's much better to send in something that can actually kill them in close combat. Because that way there you're not wasting las cannon shots on them, and then hoping that their invulnerable save isn't like, Cataphracti 4+. It's already there, so you want something with lots of attacks, let's say, to get in there that already cut through the 2+. That's just one example. And every time you pick something to go in your army, you need to consider how that affects your next choice. If you just keep getting firepower, then you're probably neglecting close combat, you're probably neglecting mobility, or the ability to even just take objectives. So that's, again, something to consider. And this is not in any way definitive. I'm sure I forgot stuff. I'm sure that at least one thing in here somewhere, someone who's far more veteran with heresy is going to come out and say, no, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. And they could be right. And in fact, in that case where they're a veteran player, they probably are right. So this is just my thoughts as somebody who is new to 30K, but not new to wargaming, not new to Warhammer 40,000. I know what I do to build lists in 3rd edition all the way to 7th. I know what I did to build lists in 8th edition. And, you know, even though I wasn't playing 9th edition, I understood the basics of what I needed. It was just a case of I wasn't enjoying that game. And I guess I'm going to kind of leave it there. Just remember that when you're making your army, this is for fun. Don't stress about the details of what you need to win every single match. If you're playing just to win, I'm not going to say you're wrong, but you might be playing for the wrong reasons. If it's a tournament, sure. But when you're playing with your friends or just a pickup game at the store, you're playing for fun. So get stuff, add to your army with things that you think are fun. Whether it's fun to paint them, whether it's fun to look at them on the board, or whether there's something about their rules. Just basically be excited. If you're not excited and having fun, you're not going to finish your army. You're going to leave it half painted. You're going to start something else. You're just going to sell and walk away. Fun. Just make sure you're having fun. That's really important, especially if you're a new player. Don't fret. Don't worry about, you know, your win-loss ratio. I have never started a game and been worried whether or not I was winning or losing. I don't think I won a game of Warhammer for like 2 years when I first started playing, other than just like the initial matches of me and my, you know, some of my buddies that I first started with. But once I was playing in the bigger community of local gamers, I was playing against guys that were playing at that point for 2, 3, 5 years already. They had big armies, they knew the rules, they knew the strategies better. And I learned by watching and losing. So don't worry about the you know, how good your list is. Worry that basically you have what you need to win and that you can figure out how to use it later. And, you know, and that your tactics evolve. For real, though, I'm going to stop it there because I'm just going to keep rambling. Thank you very much if you did listen. I know this was long. And if you enjoyed it, give me a like, maybe subscribe. Leave comments and tell me what I could do better, what, you know, what you agree with, what you disagree with, anything. I just want to hear it. This is the longest I've done a video, I think, and like my mouth is going dry. I'm a bit nervous even, just because I don't want this to be a mess. I want this to make sense. And I'm somebody who does get nervous about things like this. You know, I could sit in front of a school of 300 kids, give them, you know, the instructions for the day, and I've done it many times, and it's nothing, it's fine. But I get sometimes talking to groups of people I don't know as well, or, you know, in this case here at all, other than just from talking to some of you in the comments, it does make me nervous. So I apologize if there's any issues with that kind of stuff. But yeah, thanks very much for listening, and everybody have a great day.